Quite some time ago, I had this conversation with someone and they said, Mike, why should I work with you? There's two main things that I help people do, advance their communication and then actually become keynote speakers. And they said, Mike, why should I come work with you? And this person right here, she had just launched out into her consultative career. She had done incredible. She had all kinds of degrees behind her names. She was extremely qualified in so many different areas. Yet she just lacked some confidence in her communication and she wanted to expand her brand really for marketing, get herself out there. And she said, why should I work with you? And I thought about that for a moment. It was the first time someone had really sincerely asked me that question, that type of way. And I said, because I was like you. I had all kinds of insecurities. I had all kinds of things that held me back. And then I was able to build a brand, launch a career, and overcome a lot of those different things. And that's what I want to show you today, that unlocking executive presence, you might be in the spot where she was. She's not there anymore. She's since then went on to write a book. She's become a public speaker. She's doing all kinds of incredible things. But where she started is not where she now is. And so you might be in that spot where you're like, hey, I don't really feel like I have the executive presence that I really want, which is why you're in this time right here. And you're thinking, Mike, why you? Why should I really pay attention and listen to you during this time, during this masterclass? Because my story did not start out with all kinds of executive presence. In fact, if you go way, way, way back, like these pictures right here, you'll see that not only was I a cute kid right here, the blonde hair, crazy blonde hair, but I also, what you can't see, had a speech impediment. And early on, I had all kinds of difficulties saying sounds. So it's amazing to me in some ways that I'm even doing what I'm doing right here, and that I actually do this for corporate training, write books, speak, and train people and coach people because I needed a coach. And when I was a kid, I couldn't say certain words. I had a speech impediment. Now, this isn't just some kind of mispronunciation. This is the inability for your muscle to create certain sounds. So I had to work with a therapist to help me get to that spot where I could just even say the sounds "j." In fact, I still have a hard time differentiating my mind between the sound shoulder and soldier. And years later, I couldn't say peanut butter and jelly, things like that. And so I got to the spot where people would ask me again and again and again. And I don't remember all of this. My mom told me about this, but she said, you got so frustrated that people couldn't understand what you were saying. Now, you might not have a speech therapy issue, but you might relate with me in the sense of I just can't seem to get my point across. People are asking me to clarify the question again and again and again. Maybe they're not saying, what did you say? Maybe they are. Maybe your articulation, your enunciation, your pronunciation, your clarity is off. And that's something that we can look at if we were to do something together. But maybe it's just the sense of you not getting your ideas across. So let me ask you this question really point blank right here. How is your communication? How are you coming across? When you speak, is that helping your executive presence or is it taking it away? Are people having a hard time understanding what you're saying when you're going into a meeting, when you are leading a team meeting, when you are rallying the troops, when you're doing a town hall, when you're persuading someone, when you are casting your vision? Are people having a hard time understanding what you're saying? Is it helping you or is it hindering you? Now, the story goes on where not only did I have the difficulty that you saw right here in this previous picture with my sister and my mom, but years later, I went down to Mexico. And it's so interesting. I was quite a serious kid, quite a serious student. When I went down to Mexico, I would get up in front of people and at first, I had just absolute terror. I write about this in my book, like absolute terror. Like I had psychosomatic sickness, and I would actually make myself sick on a weekly basis. Like my mind and my fear would make myself sick. So if you're in the spot right here, you're listening and you're going, "My goodness, Mike, I am on a 1 to 10. I'm a 7 in nervousness." I get it. I was 10 plus. It was so bad that I didn't want to go to school. I was terrified. It wasn't just standing in front of the audience, but that was part of it. And that continued. Eventually, I did learn the Spanish, and eventually, I did make some friends. And eventually, over the couple of years, but I would stand up in front of people, and my speaking would hinder me, and everybody would laugh. I wouldn't be able to get my ideas across. And as a result of that, I got called a class clown, all kinds of troubles. So then it totally changed the way that I perceive myself. In fact, really there's a correlation between the way that you perceive yourself, your presence and the way you perceive yourself. We'll get to the executive presence in a moment, and the way that you show yourself. I often say the way that you perceive yourself is the way that others will receive you, or the way that you perceive yourself is the way that you will show yourself. And so I started really showing up as a class clown. So I started perceiving myself as a class clown. So the inverse is true. If you're showing up in a certain way where you're speaking and your presence is hindering you, then as a result of that, it starts changing the way you receive yourself. So if you've ever had that thought, like the imposter syndrome, like, do I belong here? Everybody else has this type of thing. Everybody else does this. Everybody else is here. They're older. They're more qualified. They're younger. They've got these degrees. They know how to use AI better than I do. Whatever it is, you feel like an imposter syndrome. I get it. In fact, just curious, take a quick moment and just say, in the course of your life, have you ever felt imposter syndrome? That's a sense where you don't belong, that there's a mismatch between who you are and who others are. Really, this is an issue where there's a sense of identity shift. And sometimes it comes directly as a result of your speaking. Now, thankfully, I worked on my communication. I overcame a whole bunch of that, did become a serious student again, regained who I was, actually went through some counseling, went through some coaching, worked with some tutors. And then I went off to college. And I had this embarrassing story, oh my gosh, where I spoke up in front of the entire college and nearly passed out. And it was one of those things where I thought, oh, I thought I was getting better in speaking. I thought this was something I was getting good at. I had some drama in the background as well there, some theater. And I thought maybe, but maybe not. And maybe you've even had that kind of thing where you've stepped out thinking maybe you could advance, and then you realize that maybe you're not quite there. And I thought, oh, shoot. Now, thankfully, during that time, my debate coach saw something in me and worked with me, and I worked relentlessly on the exercises he gave me. Often, really, to get better, just working on something 2 to 10 minutes a day is huge. And that's what he gave for me. That's what I give for people nowadays. 2 to 10 minutes a day is huge. And so I started doing some exercises that he told me that I should do. And I started doing some other things, started working on it. And I got to a spot where my communication was really excelling. I later on invested in, after college, I invested in Dale Carnegie's training this program. It's like a 12-week in person, like a couple thousand, $3,000, $5,000. You go in person and you have a group setting right there. Worked on my communication there, and then just kept on working on it throughout the years. Now, fast forward many years, and I've really worked on my speaking. I've done quite well. And I'm at a barbecue. I'm talking to some friends. I said, I might change my career. And someone said, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. I said, what do you do? He said, veterinary medical distribution. I said, what in the world is that? And he said, well, if you think about a veterinary, anything that they need, we get to them, whether it's the x-ray or the cotton swab. And he said, I'd hire you in a heartbeat. It's a really hard place to get into, though. So you have to go through the recruiter first. The recruiter jumps on a phone call with me, and I have a conversation with the recruiter. She calls the person that I had that conversation with. He says, hey, thank you so much for sending him my way. I've interviewed a couple hundred people for this position. Mike has no education in this area, no experience in this area, but he's the best candidate. And why was I the best candidate in the couple hundred people who applied for a very desirable job? And it's ultimately because of my communication. And my boss said, hey, look, Mike, it's going to take a while for you to understand this field. However, all I want you to do is go out there and make friends. All I want you to do is go out there and talk with people. And here's what I realized, that communication is such a powerful tool. It's the most powerful way to amplify your presence. So we're talking about executive presence and unlocking executive presence. And communication really is the most powerful way for you to amplify your presence, whether it's in an interview like my story, whether it's the promotion, recognition, influence. Over the course of that next year working with that company, I went from an unknown to the most likely voted, the most likely to gain rookie of the year, and all kinds of crazy things. I ended up in the third position in that first year, took an $800,000 territory and turned it to $4 million in 1 year. How did I do the persuasion? How did I do that? My boss would have told you it was because Mike had the ability to communicate with people. So communication is super, super powerful in this. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to help you unlock your executive presence. Part of that is going to be through communication. Now, who is speaking to you? The guy who started with a speech impediment, the guy who had all kinds of challenges along the way. So if you're going, I'm not a natural speaker, I get it. I wasn't there either. Now I am a best-selling author. The first edition of my first book has 1,200 plus reviews. Second edition has 200. The Audible has 300. So it's got about almost 2,000 in all the different platforms that you find out there. It's one of the top 10 books on public speaking. It's called Speak with No Fear. I'm the founder of UpLevel Speaking Academy. I've been doing one-on-one coaching and corporate training for the last 6 years, ever since taking a move from that job I just mentioned over into this. I'm a keynote and TEDx speaker and executive communication coach. Right there, you'll see a person I was getting ready for some interviews. UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic, getting him ready for some interviews. Now, what we're going to do here and what you're going to walk away with from this is, one, you got a guy who understands wherever you're at, whether you're at the very bottom or you're pretty darn high, you've done really well, and you're in a good corporate role, kind of like the one I was in right there. But what we're going to teach is we're going to teach you the presence gap, which is that awareness creates possibilities. We'll go through that here in just a moment. Then the UpLevel Formula. This is something I'm super excited. It's something I've been talking about for a while. It's a book in progress. Super excited about this. And then the multiplier effect. And then after that, if you stay to the end, I'll give you some information on how you could work with me directly at UpLevel to overcome insecurities, to really unlock even more executive presence, and to advance your career. All right, what does it look like for you in lesson one, the presence gap? What does the presence gap mean? What do I mean when presence gap is? Well, first of all, let's define executive presence. Executive presence is having the calm, it's having clarity, and it's having confidence no matter what. Whether you're under pressure, whether you're walking into a room, you own the space. In fact, I want you to think about those two different words, executive and presence. Executive is really how you accomplish something. Now, if you're a team leader, how do you accomplish something? Well, it's through other people. If you're a coder, how do you accomplish something? By coding. So execution is really the ability to get the stated job done. So if you have something like, it could be the guy who's going to be picking up the trash outside my house here. So there's an execution and he needs to get that job done. And there are people who have that job who do it better, and there's people who do it less. You ever watch some of those TikTok videos or YouTube videos where you see these amazing people doing a daily job and they're just so incredible doing that job? That's execution at a high level. So first of all, I want you to think about it. Where are you in your execution? Think about the daily responsibilities, the tasks set out for you. What is it that you have to do in your job? If you're a teacher, it's teaching those kids. It's corralling them and guiding them. If you're an administrator, it's getting all the different things together so that the tasks come across seamlessly and it's organized. So think about what it is and then rate yourself on a 1 to 10. Typically, when I look at ratings, I'm really thinking about 2 to 9, that unless you're at the very, 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 very top, I don't rate myself as a 10 or a 1. And then really 9 becomes the ceiling at that point in time. And so that's like, hey, I don't have any more chance to grow into this area. And so if I'm really, 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 really good, then I'm going to go 8. If I still have some room to grow and do really, really, really good, I might be 7. So I want you to think about where you are in your execution. Maybe you're newer to the role, so your execution is low. Maybe you're a student. In fact, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And we do have some students here. And so you're maybe on the lower side of things because you don't know your execution so far. And then on the other side of executive presence, you have that word presence. It's the way you show up. It's the way that you present yourself. It's the way that you come across, which is why I was talking about communication at the beginning. If you have great execution and poor presence, you really don't have executive presence, do you? One without the other is just executive or just execution or just presence. And so let's think about this. Who is a leader who stands out to you? Let me help you really put some people in your mind around this. So I want you to think about who is a leader who really stands out to you. And then this question, why? why does that person stand out to you? Think about who this might be. Maybe it's your parent, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's someone that had a great influence on your life. Okay, now let's pivot. In fact, when I do this type of presentation in person, often what I'll ask people to do is name some kind of pop culture figure. So name some kind of figure that everybody knows about in pop culture. And then I like to make it even more fun. Name somebody who is just a fictional pop culture character. And then we do a fun little exercise on that. And through the years of doing that exercise, and then I bring out a whole bunch about it, and I'll bring some of this for you. But through the years, these are the ones that always get mentioned, except for one doesn't always get mentioned, just got mentioned once. Check this out. Okay, Michael Jordan, he always gets mentioned. Steve Jobs always gets mentioned. Taylor Swift has never not been mentioned in the dozens of times that I've done this. MLK Jr. Now, this isn't really about pop culture in the sense of what I'm looking for in this, but I love that he gets mentioned. And if I go into other political leaders, Abraham Lincoln always gets mentioned as a great leader. Winston Churchill often gets mentioned. Margaret Thatcher has been shown up multiple times, and Gandhi has shown up multiple times in this. Now, these are all leaders that stand out. When I go into just fictional characters, I love this one young woman. She convinced her entire table that Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia was the massive standout leader that they came up with. And then maybe my favorite one, partly because my son was younger when this showed up, was this guy right here. Do you know who this guy is? Yeah, some people right now in the chat just Ryder. I love that. Yeah, this is Ryder from the Paw Patrol, and I just think it's absolutely obviously he's very fictional. He's not even real life right there, not live action. But I love that he shows up because he's like a 12-year-old kid in the story. I don't know where his parents are, but he has the ability to create these incredible things and lead people and talk to the mayor and all kinds of things. Now, think about every single person right here in their field, high execution. And maybe not in every field, and that's not what executive presence is. But in your field, you have high execution. So whether it's kind of political or military strategy, or law, in terms of like Abraham Lincoln, there you have Steve Jobs as the CEO, Taylor Swift music, Princess Leia as the rallying the rebels, Michael Jordan, in my opinion, the GOAT of basketball. So you have all these people who are very, very high execution, like extremely high execution. Now, when I ask what makes these people stand out, and I do this in a live type of seminar environment, it's interesting. On the whiteboard, before I get into this, I say, what makes them stand out? And almost always is the presence that they have. Isn't that interesting? I've done this so many times. I'll say, well, what made Margaret Thatcher stand out? And like when she would get up there, she would command the room. So they were not talking about her policies. They're talking about her ability. And even Ryder, they say something like he was able to make all kinds of electronics for the dogs. And he's able to talk to the mayors. And he really is this like face of the Paw Patrol. Gandhi. So a lot of people don't know about the Salt March and things like that he actually did. But the way that he spoke about peace and Abraham Lincoln, the Gettysburg Address. And so they're not thinking about the technical executive presence part or executive part presence. They're talking about the way that they show up, the presence. So when you look at this, what shows again and again is execution is high, but often remember people for how they presented themselves, how they showed up. And that's what executive presence is. It's the ability for you to have high execution and then for you to show up. Now, there's a gap. What is the gap? The gap is your competence and your perceived competence. So competence is, again, that execution, your ability to get things done. But then there's the perceived competence when people show you. And if people think that your execution is high, sorry, let me go back. If people look at your presence and they go, man, that person's ability to communicate, to stand out, to speak in front, to command the room with words, if your presence is at a level 10, people will assume that your execution matches it. So assume, even if your coding or technical prowess or administration isn't as high, if your presence, if your ability to show up, if your perceived competence is high, then people will just assume that your competence matches it, that your execution matches it. Now, the inverse is also true. So if your execution is actually extremely, extremely, extremely high, if your execution is amazing, you're a level 10, you're a unicorn, but the ability to show up lacks, then it pulls down your competence because people perceive you as less, and then people don't give you the opportunity to do so much. Now, let me give you a little visual of this. One of the people that I just love watching him speak nowadays is Satya Nadella. And when you think about Satya Nadella as a Microsoft CEO, you can see the journey that he's been on. And in this, you will be able to see the difference. Now, here's what's interesting is when he was younger, his display, his presence wasn't there. Now, the execution, the ability to do things was there. He's a very sharp guy, well trained, lots of experience, but his ability to show up wasn't there. Yet for him to get to the spot where he is now the CEO of Microsoft, the competence didn't really need to change that much. He just needed to continue to build on that. But the ability for him to show up. So he worked with an executive communication coach, and he went from here.
Um, as you can see, the most important architectural requirement for this piece is to be able to integrate data which exists on a host or a mainframe right now into Excel. Excel being our front-end tool, and the AS400 in our case being the data repository. So what I'm going to do now is exit out of this environment and show you how we can better integrate this data into Excel.
Now, how would you describe his presence here? It's not horrible. It's not like a 0 or a 1 or a 2, but it's not outstanding. You're not like, let's get this guy as the CEO of the company right here. And so his presence wasn't what it needed to be for him to stand out. His competence was growing. In fact, he's about to go into some very technical things right here. Great. His ability to understand, his ability to relate with people. But for him to get to that next level, the gap needed to be closed. Check this out. This is him today.
My great-grandfather, who was a marginal farmer, had just passed away.
He's starting with the story.
Leaving my great-grandmother, a young widow with 2 sons and no source of income. To provide for her sons and their future,
emotion,
she had to move to a town nearby.
The way he holds
make
himself.
Some difficult choices. She became a domestic
servant, variation of his voice.
But still could only afford to send one of her sons to school. While the 2 boys were close in age, both
He's
in
not
grade
moving
school,
around without purpose.
one was seen as being more responsible, while the other...
Now, we could go on, and it's a fascinating one, and maybe you can check out this on your own journey. But there's a great ways for you to reflect on this, is just some simple questions. How do you come across right now? Are you more of the early Satya Nadella, where you're technically aware of what you need to do, but you're just not doing it at a high level? How do you come across? And then how do you want to come across? So how do you want people to see you when you walk into the room? And here's a great question. Does your communication subtract? Does it just simply equal? It doesn't really do anything. Does it add, or does it multiply your competence? So when I went into the territory manager skill, my competence was extremely low, but my communication multiplied it to the point where I got hired above a couple hundred other people. In the case of many people that I get to work with, their competence is extremely high. Their execution is extremely high, but the perception of it, because of their lack of presence, is low. And as you look at this, this is 100% something that can be learned. There's something that you can do to achieve this. There's something you can do to improve this. And we're going to talk about that right here in lesson number 2. Now, this is what I call the UpLevel Formula. Yeah, my company is UpLevel Communication. It's all over there, right there. And I'm working on this whole idea of, hey, wherever you are, let's take you to the next level. And a while back, I built this. It came across on a one-on-one conversation that I was having with somebody. And as I was having this conversation, I realized that there's 4 different letters that are going to help you get to that spot where you need to improve. So this is a time for you to buckle down, think about where you are here. You look about the presence gap. Maybe you're realizing that there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And there's an ability for you to add to your execution with presence, to have executive presence. How do you get there? The UpLevel formula. Now, what does this look like? A stands for awareness. You have to be aware of anything you want to change. If right now I had something in my teeth and it was big green and I wasn't aware of it, I wouldn't change it. But if all of a sudden you made it known to me, the knowledge part right here, the K, I'd be like, oh, there's something. And then I would take action, the practice, and I would remove it. Then I'd give you, ask for feedback. And I'd say, do I have something in my teeth? And you'd say, no. Hey, I already went from right here at the bottom and I already grew to the top. Now, this is a simple area because it's simply removing some lettuce from my teeth. But there's other areas that we need to take this in a repetitive motion. It's kind of a cycle. In fact, you'll go something like awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback loop to awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback loop to awareness, knowledge, practice. And so your growth goes up, goes down a little bit as you become aware of something that's negative, and you fall back into an old pattern, then you go up, and then you keep on growing that way. So that's what the outcome looks like when you put this in a cycle. Now, awareness is identifying your blind spots. It's identifying what you're not doing well, but it's also identifying what you're doing well. See, sometimes we lack confidence because we're so high on what we need to improve that we don't know what we're doing well. So awareness needs to actually include that what you're doing well as well. When I'm coaching someone one-on-one, what I do is we record the session and send it back to that person so they have a chance to look at it again so that they can see what they're doing well, but also see what they need to improve. Then you want to have knowledge. Now, knowledge is really broken up into two different areas. There is knowledge that is specific and general. And knowledge that's general. So, for example, if you were to say, Mike, I want you to be my personal trainer. I see your physique, Mike, and my gosh, you are chiseled. Let's work together. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Someone just sent me a message and say, yeah, they actually, okay. Anyway, thank you for commenting and just sending me little messages throughout the time. It just makes it feel a little bit less one-sided on a masterclass. So thank you for that little brief comment right there. Now, when you're looking at this, when you're looking at this, the knowledge is general and it's specific. So the general knowledge, what is that? General knowledge is something that's applicable to everybody. Everybody needs a good amount of sleep and water and a clean diet. Whatever that diet specifically looks like is different. It could be specifically tailored to someone else. Michael Phelps had a diet that nobody else should have because what his goals were. It was different. So he had specific knowledge that was different to him than for someone who had a different goal over here. So the general knowledge is that which is true to everybody. There's general knowledge about communication. There's general knowledge about getting your job done on execution. There's general knowledge on leadership. There's general, but then there's specific. So what is your specific case? This is why if someone doesn't ask enough questions or they don't actually see you, it's hard to give them, really for them to give you specific knowledge. And sometimes in cases like this, people ask me a question in the chat and it is really based on the context of what they're going through. So I have this kind of situation. What do I do? Well, I need a little bit more specifics on that to give you specific knowledge. So there's general knowledge, there's specific knowledge according to the different settings and environments that you're going to be speaking into, speaking off the cuff versus presenting in front of a large room. And then from there, you practice. You absolutely cannot get better if you're not practicing. Now, a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I don't have time to practice. Super busy. Almost every single person I work with is mid to high level professionals. So they don't have just extra time just floating around. And so what do we do? Well, what we end up doing is we find 2 to 10 minutes a day where they can practice 5 days a week. And that right there puts it in motion. It's like saying, hey, I don't have time to go to the gym 2 hours every single day. I don't. Maybe you do. That's fantastic. I don't have that time. So I have to find that time elsewhere, right in the middle of my work and all the responsibilities I have as a dad and a husband, et cetera. So you got to think about, how do I get that practice out there? It could be 2 to 10 minutes a day and something that I'm doing on a regular basis. I'm going to give you a couple things to practice on a couple general skills that will be helpful for you. Then you do need a feedback loop where someone on the outside is able to give you the feedback that's going to help you grow. Now, have you ever asked for feedback and it was absolutely meaningless? Yeah, let's see. Just go ahead. Let's take a quick moment. Shoot me a little chat right there. Have you ever asked for feedback and the feedback was meaningless? Yes, absolutely. Right. I love asking that question in the different environments where I give this type of talk. And it's always yes. It's always absolutely, I've done that. And the reason why is because we are so conditioned to either be passive or passive aggressive, and we don't know actually how to give feedback that's good. And so our feedback goes like this. In fact, someone gives a really good talk, and people say, "Hey, that was good." And then if someone gives a really bad talk, they go, "No, that wasn't bad. That was good. It was good. It was good." It's just a slight tonality difference right there. But how do you actually give feedback? So how do you give feedback? How do you ask for feedback? How can you do that feedback loop that I just talked about without even working with someone like myself? So after you speak, here's how you give feedback, or here's how you ask for feedback. And simply this: what's one thing specifically that I did well? What's one thing specifically that I could have improved right there? And so even on this, Mike, what is one thing that I could specifically could have improved? You could have done this, this, and this. Very specifically, when you did this, you lost me a little bit. Hey, I always appreciate that kind of feedback as well. Or what is something that I did well? I love how you set up the screen so that you're next to the slide, whatever it might be on this. And so that kind of specific feedback. You can say, did you realize that you said the word 27 times? No, I didn't. I love how you started and you didn't waste time at the very beginning. So you're encouraging the type of communication, the type of presence, the type of showing up that you want them to repeat. And then you're discouraging or you're correcting the things that need to be changed. And that's just how to give feedback. What's one and one very specific. Ultimately, what I need you to walk away with as we talk about the UpLevel formula is that confidence isn't a personality trait. So if you're walking in and thinking, I just need more confidence, I'm not a confident person, I've never been a confident person, or I've never been a confident speaker, I've never been confident in this environment, whatever type of confidence you're looking for, confidence is not a personality trait, it's a process. And you can do this. You can build your confidence higher and higher. And it can be confidence that's validated on really not only excellent execution, but also amazing presence. All right, let's go into the third lesson here. And the third lesson is what I call the career multiplier effect. And ultimately, what I want you to see here is the outcome of communication confidence is so deep. So working on this brings you promotions, brings you pay raises. And I could go through people again and again on this. Like I could talk about Naren. I could talk about Bobby and how he went through several different promotions, which came with pay raises. I could talk about Yarlene Court, who the visibility that getting up in front of people absolutely brought. I could talk about influence that Jeff had when he worked on his communication, his confidence, and his power in communication. I could talk about Amy Ho and all the different incredible opportunities that showed up. Ultimately, the working on your presence and working on your communication is a 100% multiplier on this. In fact, let me show you this right here. And I'm going to give you three specific skills that I want you to work on here in just a moment too. But let me paint the picture for this. Say, for example, you go in and you're looking to hire somebody. Let's say the service is a roofing company. You want to hire a roofing company, and you have two different people come in. Now, if service A and service B is identical, then just pick one. It doesn't matter. So literally, I want you to think about like these people are almost identical. You're scoping out some people to do a project in your house. You're scoping out a roofing contractor to do some work on your house, and the first person looks like this, and the second person looks like this. They're like same height, same demographic, same. I mean, put it almost everything. Put skin color, put age, put everything on there. So like, there's no bias at all on this. And then think about like they talk the same, the ability to communicate the same, the price is the same. They both have 10 people on their team. They've both been in business 10 years. I mean, literally, if they're identical, it doesn't really matter. Just pick one because hey, it doesn't really matter. But let's say that service B, roofing contractor B, is actually slightly less in some ways than service A. In fact, maybe their price is higher. maybe their team is a little bit smaller. But check this out. If service A and service B is for all intents and purposes the same, just pick one. But if service B is slightly smaller than service A or slightly more expensive, but their communication quotient is twice as high, then you will pick service B. Now, I dare you to think about this. If you have someone come in, it could be about two publishers who want to publish your book and the same prices, same everything. But the person who's talking to you and selling you into publisher B has a little bit more communication quotient. Even actually, they're $2,000 more, but their communication quotient just makes you more at peace. It gives you more confidence because communication quotient is what we talk about when we talk about the halo effect. The halo effect is that when someone's communication is better, it has this halo effect that everything else is better as well. So go back to that service B example. If service B has better communication, you just assume, you just feel that they're just a better fit. You're not even sure what it is. This is why communication and presence is the career multiplier effect. A lot of people think about execution. I got to get my education. I got to get my experience up. But the reason why executive presence is such a big term right now is because a lot of people are building their competence, but they haven't been building the perceived competence. They haven't built up the presence side of things. And yet when you build this side, the halo effect, it just cascades. In fact, there are people who won't go work for an amazing leader because they don't think they're an amazing leader. They might be a level 10 leader, but they don't think they're an amazing leader until they go work for them. And then they go, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. This woman's amazing. But on the other hand, there's people who will go work for a leader because they think they're amazing. And they go over there like, oh my gosh, this is awful working over here. The halo effect of communication is real, that as you start putting in some of the skills that I'll talk about in a moment, I'll give you 3, then you're going to have some incredible, incredible feedback. I love when I got a chance to work with someone on this, we were able to take his competence, multiply it by confidence, and able to help him really build in influence. His name is Eddie. And at the beginning of our journey together, this is a little bit of how he communicated. He's actually giving a speech right here, but it doesn't even feel like a speech. And this is his oral presentation on this. And then there's a little bit after clip as well. Check this out here.
I don't really have a strength, and I kind of put it down as far as the least to greatest.
Okay.
If I were going to put it that way, but I want to say finding your message was something I could probably, if I take the time to do research.
And notice just the way he's coming across right here, kind of even the way he's carrying himself, talking,
I want to
his
say that
tone, his
okay
volume,
probably need some help there.
the way he holds himself.
Communication, how things are going.
The good thing is I don't get the rapid heartbeat anymore.
Look at the
so
smile,
I'm able to breathe,
confidence,
take time.
feeling,
key feedback I
looking
get
into
from
the
my
screen.
boss every so often. He mentions, you're doing well. You're actually speaking more, and he always gives me critiques and he analyzes everything, but he's always encouraging me to speak up. So every time we're in a team meeting or if we're even an executive meeting, he's like, hey, Eddie, you have anything to say? Just right off the cuff. And I asked him to do that. So he really enjoys doing that.
So now he has that confidence, which is increasing his influence. Now he's asking, he has the ability to ask this, and he doesn't feel like he's held back by his presence now. And now he is going up, and he works for a huge company in the United States. It's a huge example of someone right here who's moving forward, and he's got some of the experience. He's not the most experienced. He's not the highest end level. He's still building his career.
I don't really have
a great example of what the people who move forward. They're not always the ones who are the most experienced, but they're often the ones that are working on their communication. So let's close that gap. Let me give you 3 different things that you could do to close the gap on executive presence. So the first one is going to be volume. These are 3 skills for executive presence. The first one is volume. If you look at the first video of Eddie, you'll actually notice that he was quieter and he was looking away from the camera. And I could go through this again and again. Maybe I'll show you another video here of Dr. Maliki and a little bit of the change that she went through, or at least the aftermath of what she went through. And the volume often drops because when you're not really confident, what you often do is you don't really want to meet people in the eye, and you kind of come in and you're kind of assuming you don't want to take up too much space. But when you have that confidence and when you know what you have is valuable, then you want to speak on it. If I was giving you the cure for cancer, I wouldn't come in and be like, well, I got the cure for cancer. I might be able to help you out a little bit on this. I'd say, I got the cure for cancer. I want to help you out with this. Now, volume isn't just pushing more. There's projection that's part of it. There's speaking with your diaphragm. But a simple thing you could do is just making sure that you're looking towards the area that you're wanting to speak in. Some of you already have great eye contact, but you want to speak into the people that you're looking at, talking to, or at the camera. And then you just want to speak a little bit louder, and just making sure that your voice is not being encumbered. Make sure that you're not closing your lips, or that you're just speaking like this, because that's going to reduce the volume that's going to be able to get out. So you want to make sure you're enunciating, and you want to make sure that you're projecting, which is really taking the air into the lower part of your lungs. Your lungs go up and down. And so your lower part of your lungs, and you're actually filling this part with air, and then you're going to pull it up through your diaphragm, and you're going to release that air out there for a longer, bigger, louder, more like a deeper voice. So volume is part of it, and there's all kinds of aspects of volume, but even just speaking up a little bit is going to help you stand out. It's going to increase your presence. Not yelling, right? And then gestures. There's an interesting study. I write about this in one of my books. I write about how I studied a whole bunch of different TEDx talkers, and the ones that have the most amount of views are the ones that actually use their hands a whole bunch. Now, it's correlation, not causation. It's not because they use their hands more that they are the ones that I listen to, but there is something to it. Your gestures encode what you're saying, and also makes you come across more likable and stand out, and it makes you come across like you have more presence. In fact, literally, you're taking up more space. There's more presence that you have as you're just using your hands. So there's a couple different ways that you can use your hands. One is you don't actually have to move them all the time. You can actually just keep them out at different times. If you watch the replay to this, you'll actually see this. Or you could actually just drop them and have them drop down here for a while. This one feels often a little bit unnatural, but it actually doesn't come across unnatural. And then what you saw Satya Nadella do right here is just what called like a middle position, and it's just a foundation, it's a base. And he uses this one right here, which is what I encourage as well, instead of interlocking for all kinds of reasons. And then you can move with your words. But gestures are going to help you stand out. So don't just take your hands or do something with your hands. Use your hands so that you can stand out, so that you can close that gap. And the third one is pauses. And pauses is absolutely huge. It allows people to think about and process what you already just said. So you want to make sure that you use the pauses so that you can actually be heard. So if I'm talking a whole bunch and I just keep talking and I never pause, then you don't have time to actually process. So this is something that helps you stand out. In fact, if I'm talking, and there's a gap right there, you go, wow, what he just said must have been really important because he took that pause. And this is also how you correct yourself. Now, these are a couple of 3 skills that I highlight in different environments that I work on with people as well. But they're absolutely crucial for you to develop that sense of, hey, I am not only good in my execution, I'm good at my job, I'm confident in my presence. I can show up. I can't just do the work, I can show that I do the work. It's not people who do the work that get recognized and promoted. It's people who are seen doing the work that get recognized and promoted. So it's both and, but this is what people see. And this is exactly what I've built together, the UpLevel Speaking Academy. And this is what I help people with. Now let's go back to this and let's look at a couple of these lessons. What did you learn today? The 3 big takeaways. There is a presence gap, and it's really, you got execution, you got presence. Where are you and where do you want to be? Okay, if your presence is low, how do you get higher and higher and higher? Use the UpLevel formula. It's the process, it's the path for you to get to the next level. Awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback. Awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback. Awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback. And when you do this, you will multiply your success. You'll multiply your competence. See, when it comes to everything you need to advance your career, you've got the credentials. All you need to do is multiply them with communication so that people can see what you're doing, like what Eddie's talking about, like so many other people are doing. And this is what I do. I told you I mentioned a little bit about what I do with people. This is what we're achieving through UpLevel communication. For the last 6 years, in different ways. This is what I've been doing. And through UpLevel, what I do is I help people break through communication barriers. Sometimes communication is the barrier that keeps them from advancing to the next level. So we work together, like Eddie, to break that barrier to get to the other side. And sometimes they're already at the top level and they're already doing fantastic. Like when Dr. Maliki came to me, she was already a dentist having all kinds of incredible success. But when she came to me, she just felt nervous and she just was talking so fast. In fact, hear from her own words a little bit of what she worked on in this 1 minute video. And by the way, she didn't write this script. This is what she did after our last coaching session. I said, hey, you want to talk a little bit about that? And look what she put together. And if she can do it, you can do it.
I've been working with Mike for over a year, and my intention in taking this course was to improve my public speaking skills. I am an individual who was raised in a church, raised in parochial school, and had many opportunities with public speaking, but I absolutely hated it, despised it. Even though people would say, oh, you did such a good job, I absolutely hated it. I currently have a position with my company where I need to speak to people frequently, and my intention was to work on 3 goals. 1, to stop speaking so fast. 2, to more effectively deliver my communication. And 3, to become less anxious with public speaking. And I must say that over the past year, my sessions with Mike have helped me so much in achieving all 3 of those goals. I definitely feel more confident in my public speaking, and I definitely feel that my message is delivered more effectively and more clearly, as well as I don't speak so fast anymore, which is fantastic. So if you have any doubts or if you're on the fence about taking this program, please, please, please dismiss those doubts. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah. Now, here's what I want to say with her right there. And if you want to explore what it looked like to work together on this, absolutely take a little picture of this QR code, and I'll drop it in the chat here in just a moment too. But take a little picture of this QR code, schedule a conversation with me. We'll talk if it's a good fit for what we're working on, and I'll just take some of what we talk about here and apply it to you anyway. Make sure that you walk out of that 20, 30-minute conversation with something really good on this. When Dr. Maliki came to me, she was super busy. She got married that year. All kinds of craziness was happening. She's already at the top of her career. She's not looking for career advancement. She was a general practitioner, and then she's also training other general practitioners through the company she's talking about. So she's here, but she felt like she was here. So in other words, there was that gap right there, and she was able to close that gap. And I love watching her video because I'm like, oh, you worked on this, and you worked on this, and you did this so well. And all of that was right there on the spot, like off the cuff. Hey, would you do this? She organized it, used 3 points, signposted, took a deep belly breath, maintained eye contact, good volume right there. And if you compare that with her starting point, it wouldn't be there. And it all came from her doing the UpLevel formula, getting awareness, knowledge, practice, and then we had the feedback loop together. And if you were thinking, I want to do that, Mike, as well, this is what it looks like when you work with me. 100+ lessons of general knowledge, weekly office, hour calls, monthly workshops, all kinds of different ways that we work together to get you to the result where your executive presence is unlocked so that you can advance your career. So if you're thinking, Mike, I want to do that. I want to build momentum. I want to get to that next spot. I feel like I'm stuck, or I feel like I'm not stuck yet. I'm going towards it, and I can see that there's going to be some kind of obstacle. Then absolutely what we need to do is we need to break through to the other side so that you can have the success that you want. So take that QR code, find a spot right there, and let's make sure that we up level your communication. I'm going to leave this right here. And then if you have just different thoughts, I'd love for you just to post them in the room. I'll get back to them later. We can bring them into our time here. But this has been our 50 minutes right here of going through and helping you unlock your executive presence. Remember, the presence gap is real and you can close it. It's not just about what you do, but it's how you're seeing what you're doing. How do you do it? The UpLevel formula: awareness, knowledge, practice, feedback again and again and again. Whether that's with me, on your own with some friends. And ultimately, it's the career multiplier. Using some different skills like volume, gestures, and pauses are going to really advance you to the next spot. And if that's what you needed, you just needed that reminder, that encouragement, awesome. To your success, we'll love to hear about how you're succeeding. If you could pick up a book or something like that, fantastic. But if you're thinking, Mike, I'm really serious about actually doing this with you, like Dr. Maliki, like Eddie, like so many of these different people, then I invite you to book a call right here. I'm going to close with this before we wrap up this webinar here today. I want to say thank you for being a part of it and honoring me with your time. I don't take that for granted. Thank you for letting me speak into you. My personal mission is to help people realize their potential. Where you are right now is not where you need to stay. Just because you've been doing the same communication style for years doesn't mean you have to stay there. Just because you have the anxiety and you've been there for a long time doesn't mean you need to stay there. Just because you've been slowly growing doesn't mean you need to slowly grow. Just because you have all these ideas and you have desires, they don't have to stay here. Where you are is not where you have to stay. I would have never imagined that kid that I was, who couldn't even say ja, got to a spot where I'm training people and working with people. Where you are is not where you need to stay. I'd love to help you unlock your executive presence for your career moving forward. Thank you so much, Mike Acker. Until next time.